Let me welcome everybody. Let me welcome you to the Future Trends Forum. My name is Brian Alexander. I'm your host and chief cat herder for this hour. And I'm very glad to see all of you here today. I'm looking forward to hearing from you as well. We have a lot to cover today, so let's begin first by describing what the forum is and where it came from, how it works. So, one thing you should know is that this is a discussion based video spin off of the regular Future Trends in Technology and Education report. If you don't know that, FTTE is a monthly trends analysis. It's been coming out for years. We track about 86 trends across all of education and technology. We track these in order to have detailed information about the present so we can see what that tells us through extrapolation about the future. If you haven't had a chance to explore it yet, just go to ftte.us and take a look at a few issues, sign up if it interests you. Now, the Future Trends Forum and FTTE are together part of a broader project called the Future of Education Observatory. If you haven't had a chance to see that, go to futureofeducation.us and you can take a look at all the different projects that we offer. And Tara, over to the next slide, please. The observatory includes not just the forum, not just the FTE report, but also a regular blog, also a regular book club. On top of that, an online bookstore, and a few projects just about to come out. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it yet, go to futureofeducation.us. Now, on top of that, let's go to the next slide. We have an important note about scope. When we take a look at the future of education, it's really important to consider it in a global setting, not just to look at it in terms of a nation or a region or a city, but to consider how all these developments flow and cross borders back and forth. You can see from this map that we've had this forum involving people from just about every continent on Earth and many, many nations. That represents our goal. We'd like to make sure that the next new development, the next big thing, the next important pedagogy could come from North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, or Australia. Now, over to the next slide, please. Now, before we can go on, let me explain where the forum comes from and who supports it. And we'd like to thank some of those generous supporters. To begin with, NYSERNet from New York State is a nonprofit that helps keep that state's colleges and universities wired to the high-speed internet. They do some very, very great work, and we're grateful to them for their support. We're also grateful to Shindig because, as you can tell, Shindig makes available this technology we're using now. So let me just take you through it so you can see a few of the ways that it functions. Most importantly, so you can see how to participate. Now, on the very top of the screen, where I am and where these slides are just for a minute, is called the stage. And this is a spot where, as befits the name, everybody can see and hear us. And you can join us up here. In fact, we can have 4 different people up here at one given time. Now, below us is the audience, or I think of it as the participant swarm. You can look around and you can see right now about 36, 32 people, everyone from Mark Hewlett to Gabby to Brenda to Michael Fernandez. And you can see all these different people. And in fact, if you want to talk with one of those people, just double click on them. And if they want to talk to you, your 2 icons will click together like Legos, and you can have a private conversation, which is pretty neat. But conversation is what this is really about, and there are a lot of ways for that to happen. Let me show you the 3 main ones. Look down the bottom of the screen. There's a white strip running along with a few different buttons. On the left edge, you'll see what looks like 3 human heads and a number underneath it, which is, I think, 33 right now. If you click on that, up will pop 2 new windows. The left side, you'll see a kind of film strip list of everybody who's on here. So you can see, for example, Ann Hill, you can see Tara Petzer, you can see Amy, and also you can see some silhouettes, but with still more information about them. You can see Alina's information, Diane Williams, Rita Marie Conrad, and so on. Now, to the right of that, you can see a chat box, and the chat box is for everybody to use. Simply type in it like a classic chat box, and you can hear things and compare notes. We have Maina Zhu from Indiana University, Jay Gary from Tulsa, Oklahoma, Mark Ouellette somehow from sunny New Jersey. This is a great way just to informally and quickly share thoughts. People often share links to topics that come up, titles of books that get referenced, that kind of thing. And I'll be checking that throughout the hour. Let's go back to that white strip. There are 2 more buttons. Next to the chat film strip option, you'll see a circle with a question mark in it. And if you highlight it, it says ask. Click that if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment. It's really simple. When you click it, up will pop a little box. You can type in a comment or a question, and when the time is right, we'll flash it on the screen so everyone can see it and read it, and then I'll read it out loud so everyone can hear it. So that works as well. But best of all, back in that white strip, you'll see a raised hand button. Click that, and that tells us that you want to join us here on stage. So if you have a microphone that's working, if your camera is working, you're in a good spot where you can talk out loud, um, click that. And when the time is right, we'll beam you up on stage and you can ask Dhawal and myself and anybody else questions and comments. Think of it as a way to have a live video panel. It's really easy to do. It's actually faster to do than it was for me to describe it. And you can join us. So those are three ways. There's the question box, there's the raised hand for joints in video, there's the chat box. And on top of that, if you're a Twitter user, just use the hashtag FTTE and you can ask questions and push comments out right there. I'll be monitoring Twitter as we go. So those are all kinds of different ways you have to interact because unlike what I'm doing right now, this whole hour is based on conversation and discussion. And we're grateful to Shindig for making available the technology that lets it happen. We're also grateful, speaking of swarms a few minutes ago, to another swarm of supporters over on Patreon. If you don't know Patreon, it's a crowdfunding site, kind of like GoFundMe or Kickstarter. The idea is it crowdfunds and supports a creative person. In this case, it supports me in my work in the future of education and technology. So if you contribute as little as $1 a month, you help keep the lights on and the microphones humming, keeps everything going. You can see from this image a whole bunch of people who contributed from Kyle and Bob Johnson, Jeannie Kim Han, Paul McConaughey, Michael Collins, Chris Lott, Tom Hames, Robin DeRosa, Corey S., all kinds of people. Please go to patreon.com/Brian Alexander, and we'd be grateful to you for your support if you can provide it. And we're very grateful to all the Patreon supporters so far. So that's who supports the Future Transform. That's how it works. This is where we think about it. This is where it comes from. Now let's dive into this week's guest. I'm very, very grateful and very excited to have Dhawal Shah here. Dhawal is the CEO and founder of Class Central. If you don't know it, Class Central is the world's leading website about MOOCs. It's a site that continually has up-to-date statistics and information. In my work in FTTE, we've been citing Class Central for years. I've never met Dhawal until now, but I've been following his work for years and really much appreciate it. What are MOOCs? What do they mean right now? Where are they going? Let's dive into that. And we're looking forward to your questions and comments. Tara, let's bring Dhawal back up on stage. Greetings.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. It's good to see you. Where are you today?
I'm in California.
You had to
Silicon
think about
Valley.
it.
Yeah. No, I was going to say Silicon Valley first, but then maybe everybody doesn't know where Silicon Valley is since it's a global forum.
Well, I appreciate that. So United States, subset California, subset Silicon Valley. Welcome. We're glad to see you. Just to begin with, let me ask, what's involved in running Class Central? What do you get to do for most of the time? Are you online doing research? Are you interviewing people? Are you maintaining the website? What kind of stuff is involved?
It's a bit of everything. We're a very small team, and for a long time it was mostly me and a few part-time volunteers. So a lot of our efforts are actually spent in maintaining the data set, talking to providers. We have ads, just talking to a lot of people, making sure the website is up. Writing articles, I think a big chunk of my time goes into writing articles, especially when I do my end of year analysis. I basically stop doing everything else. What else? Yeah, we now like go to conferences. So just either if I'm speaking for at the conference, some of my time goes into preparing for that.
Sure.
And day to day, we are also improving the website. We are also trying to build more features. So hopefully we get more efficient so that we build more time building new stuff than spend time on maintaining what we already have.
That makes sense. What do you know about your audience for the website? Who tend to be the people who use it most often?
I mean, generally, like we don't target anyone specific. We target generally free online courses, and a lot of our users come through Google and the articles we write. And the articles that generally get popular are from are on coding and technology. So a big chunk of our audience is looking for
Mm.
technical skills as well as business and career ready skills that might help in their career. But we do have a very global presence, and we do have people from all ages, and some of them also help us out, behind the scenes, writing articles, guest posts. So I think it's a very diverse audience, and I would say we don't know much about them because we don't really actually ask them these questions. We don't do any demographic. So I think we have done it once, but we don't really ask them much about their, you know, background or something like that.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, the interest in business and coding, I mean, those are some of the most popular topics for MOOCs themselves. Friends, I have all kinds of questions to ask. But don't let me do that. All of you will have questions and comments as we go. So again, please feel free to use the different buttons I told you to share your thoughts and questions based on where we have it. And I'd like to lead off actually with a question from someone who can't talk right now because he's on a plane, but he wanted me to ask a very specific question. He asks, what subjects and what level courses are getting the most traction with MOOCs? So that is which academic topics, computer science, English, that kind of thing, but also what level? I mean, introductory classes, graduate level, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, generally, coding is definitely huge. And if you can see many platforms now have, like even Coursera and edX have multiple introductory coding courses, which are basically competition to each other.
Hmm.
Um, so, you can sort of also judge what is doing well from their own, how they are responding to the market. Uh, data science, machine learning, that's also
Hmm.
huge. It's also one of the most monetizable aspects of online education because people who are doing these courses generally know programming and might already have a job, and they're just looking for a higher salary or more pay. So they're more, for them the outcomes are pretty obvious. A increase in salary, or so they're more willing to pay. Like the most popular course is Learning How to Learn, which has more than 2 million people enrolled. So there's a
Whoa.
huge, yeah. So it's on Coursera, Barbara Oakley. There are a few courses out there with more than 1 million users. So I think it depends. Like popularity also depends on the sub. Like for professional learners, the popularity is more around courses that are more career focused, either be it business or technology. And for lifelong learners, they might go more into the humanities. People who are just learning for the sake of learning, sort of like the grade courses model. So they might prefer more courses that are not, like learning how, they might prefer learning how to learn or other humanities or social science courses. There's something else I was planning to add. Yeah, and
So,
it's mostly introductory, I think. Uh,
ah,
I mean, there are advanced courses, but just generally introductory courses, things, that sometimes there's a entry level barrier to learning, and I think MOOCs are a good way to get over that barrier. Uh, I had the same trouble trying to get learn data structures and algorithms a long time ago, and I did a Stanford course, and then after that, I found out like the whole internet was open to me. Like YouTube videos that didn't make sense now made sense. All the articles that were just like what I see MOOCs as, like, here's like how to spend the next 20, 30 hours in this specific topic. Like it's a single storyline, single professor telling you what to do. So you can just focus on the learning and not worry about, what to do next. You just have this, come in and you know what to do next immediately. So
yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Especially the difference between, as you described, professional learners looking for their careers and lifelong learners more interested in learning for its own sake. Michael, that was a great question, and we'll follow up in a bit with more. Um, uh, let's see. A second question to ask that came up from another person is, in the United States, 2012 or 2013 was the year of the MOOC. I mean, this is when MOOCs had tremendous publicity, tremendous buzz. University after university after college, or investing or thinking about investing. And then we seem to have reached what Gartner calls the peak of the hype cycle. And following that, we had a crash. People don't talk about MOOCs as much in the United States. What do you think is happening now? Are we still down in the doldrums for MOOCs? Are MOOCs basically dead in the US, or are they growing just without any buzz or publicity?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like back to the hype, I'm actually very pro hype. The only reason because it got a lot of people moving in a certain direction because of the hype. It became normal for universities to create online courses. Um, Finally, the people who are in charge of teaching the world are now actually teaching the world.
Uh,
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 I'm very, it created the escape velocity needed for it, to become university online education accessible online at a very low cost. It made that possible. So, and since then, I think MOOC providers have been grinding it out. They have figured out their target audience. They've figured out their business model. Uh, it might not, they still added 23 million learners in the last year itself. It's worldwide. 23 million new learners, taking the total 81 million learners who at least signed up for a MOOC by the end of 2017.
wait, can
More
you say
than
that second number again? Did you see 81 million users?
it's since the beginning who have signed up for at least one MOOC. So
Wow.
across the world in the last 6 years. So um, and yeah, there are more than 10,000 courses now. So they've been grinding out. More than 800 universities have launched their courses. So the hype, the press coverage might not be there, but I think they're still making their way uh, into, it's hard to change a culture of not learning, which we have. Like we're
Mm,
not used to spending. We might learn when we need something tomorrow, but we are not used to spending, months ahead of time to learn something new. That's not there. We just spend, we go to university and then we stop learning. So I think that culture will take a lot of time to change. So even if the courses are there,
mm,
people still can't take advantage of the same as fitness, which it took a long time to get the fitness culture
right.
to get going. So the learning culture, it's will probably take less long because you will have no option as because our jobs are not the same that we do 5 years ago or something like, or even you can't stay in the same job for a long time. So there's market forces that will push their learning culture. Um, and MOOCs have sort of, they've evolved into they're trying to become more formal. Many of them are like many nowadays. edX has a credential called
Right.
MicroMasters, which has credit attached to it. You have to still get accepted in the master's program of the university, but it's a signal that a university is basically accepting their own courses for credit, which is a good sign because it increases the credibility of the course. They're going towards online degrees. I think Coursera announced 6 degrees recently. They have 10 online degrees. Udacity's online masters in computer science has 6,500 students enrolled in them.
Wow.
Uh,
How?
so
Uh,
that's a really, really big number for a master's CS degree for a top tier school too.
mm. We had a question that came in earlier, which was how many people have graduated entirely by MOOCs?
I have no clue. Uh,
Yeah, I do.
it's also how do you define graduated? Just finishing
Mhm, mhm.
a course is just I don't know if it's called it's graduated. There's some courses that you might finish in 2 hours, some you might not finish in 3 months. So there's a big sort of diversity. Um, even in the online degree space, I don't think not that many people have graduated because these are part time and they don't enforce like a minimum number of courses or minimum number of credits you need to take, and usually don't follow as much as a semester pattern. So the graduations takes a lot much longer time, even as opposed to a traditional part-time online degree,
Hmm.
because they give the students the flexibility. So it takes a while for people to graduate.
Well, that it was an interesting question, and maybe it's one that we should explore later on after this video. We have a text question from the splendidly named Brian. Let's bring this up on. Let's see. Um, see, Tara, if you could flash it on the screen. For Brian Aldridge, he asked, what has driven the popularity of the subject areas? Talking about computer science and data. Is it the course providers, users, or the MOOC platform providers? Yeah, good question.
Uh, I think it's sort of a cycle. Initially, users, course providers, sort of, and universities sort of experiment with different content. Then users find like that content, and then you know, sort of then users provide their vote by just signing up for the courses, and then universities create more courses which attracts more users in that area. And as users find, like I'm currently doing a nano degree from Udacity,
Oh, and what?
and yeah, it's introduced AI with Python.
Oh,
So they have
nice.
an advanced AI degree, which I can't take because I don't know enough. So this is, creating entry level pathway. Now, after I do this, it will again open up, hopefully open up more online content for me from Coursera, edX, Udacity, or any other players. So I think the initial impetus, I think, was just users. If you look back on the original Stanford sort of 2011 story where users,
Hmm.
they just launched online courses and they got way more users than they thought about, the professors thought about, and then based on the demand, they launched companies and they raised money and then they got more users. And so I think it's a sort of a cycle. Everybody, that's what I like about online education system, is like we have a vote in it usually, like, because if users are not there, it's a very clear signal that it's not
Yeah,
working.
right.
So I'm not sure that it's the same thing in traditional education, because we make that decision when we are not aware of our interest. When it's professional education learners, we want more efficient learning. We want,
Hmm. Hmm.
we know kind of what we want better than probably what we knew when we signed up for our master's degree or undergrad degree. So
That might be changing in traditional higher ed.
yeah,
But we have a question from Tom Hames. Tara, let's see if we can bring him up on stage and join us from the video. See, friends, it is basically this easy. Simply click that button, tell us you want to join us, and then you look like Tom. Hello, Tom.
hey Tom.
Tom, who must unmute.
Uh,
I think you're muted again.
Oh God, there's more
There
than
you
one
go.
mute button. I'm back. All right.
Hey, Tom.
Hey, yes, no, it's frightfully easy. You put a snarky comment in the question field, and Tara will come and search you out. So, um, so my question is this: where are you seeing the center of gravity among the customer base for MOOCs being? And I'm talking about internationally. Are we getting a lot of uptake overseas as a way of cheaply educating the developing world? Is that something that's a thing? Is there, of those 81 million users, how many of those are in the US versus elsewhere? Um, or is it all primarily older users, people who don't have a college degree? I mean, I'm kind of curious about where the MOOCs are finding their purchase. I mean, there's certain communities in my mind, and I've come out of a community college background and teaching community college students, and there was all this talk about, oh, we'll use MOOCs in community college. The problem with those students in most cases is not the information transmittal, it's the fact that their learning skills are very poor, and so their attrition rate, particularly when they don't have that human contact, is extremely high. And so MOOCs are not, maybe a facilitated MOOC where you have an instructor who's facilitating someone else's content might work in that scenario, but just a straight up, well, go learn this yourself online, typically doesn't work with that population. So I'm kind of curious where you see it is most efficacious. Is that here in the U.S.? Is that geographically elsewhere? I mean, where were you seeing those users?
I think I would say around, yeah, it's long questions. Hopefully I'll be able to answer all of them. I think 20 to 25%.
I promise not to follow up.
I think 20 to 25% of the people are in US. I think there's a huge global population, but I would still say like it's definitely not reaching the people you think would be useful to more. The people who need it the most, they still don't know about MOOCs. 81 million sounds like a big number, but I don't think it is. Something like Duolingo has more users than the entire MOOC market. So, so I feel like there's a lot to be done. But the sweet spot is generally people already with degrees, people who are able to learn on their own. It's a business, right? So you still have to make money. So you have to target people who already have money, unfortunately. I mean, I think facilitate sessions, and that's what I like about the MOOC world is like the content is there, and now maybe an ecosystem should develop around it where people leverage the content. And one of the reasons I like about MOOCs is like, when you're learning, it's not just about the material, it's about like the reason I did the first AI class from Sebastian Thrun, who later on founded Udacity, is like I was excited to take a real Stanford course. And from a real when I was growing up, Stanford was like so far away. Now I'm like within a few miles of each there, but it wasn't a reality that I could study at Stanford. So when these courses came up, like it provides excitement and enthusiasm that gets us to sign up for a course. It gets us like at least even when there's difficulty, you push through that. So I think that's what I like about MOOCs. And anytime we say like, here's a list of 250 Ivy League courses, and the posts go viral. So there's definitely appetite for like name brand universities. People don't maybe not sign up or complete, but it at least gets over some of the initial hurdles. Udacity is doing this thing called Udacity Connect, which is basically facilitated sessions around their nano degrees. And as MOOCs become more formal and attach credit to it and all that, so I'm not, technically speaking, anybody else can create a facilitated sessions around, the content provided for MOOCs and maybe charge like a small fee on top of it. So I don't know. I don't think this is happening right now, but logistically it might become possible to do so.
I would see this opening for the Gates Foundation in their developing world work. They could fund building MOOCs specifically for educating populations in areas where education would make a massive impact in their ability to function and to improve their lot in life, and perhaps even pay for facilitators to go out there and help teach it and make it more visible and so on and so forth. That seems to me like an obvious way to use it, but you got to make money off of it, obviously, and that might be where granting organization comes into play. Mm-hmm. How much have they spent to try to fight malaria? Right?
That's a different issue. But,
and it's a worthy cause too, but yeah, education is too, right? Okay, thank you.
That's a great question, Tom. Thank you. Dhawal, we had two questions that came in. I want to link them together because they're both very powerful. Mm-hmm. a minute ago, you mentioned that roughly 20 or 22% of MOOC students are in the US. And for me, it's one of the fascinating pedagogical benefits of MOOCs for American audiences is that if you're a US citizen, you get to take a MOOC and you get to be part of the global conversation. You're not just in a US audience, which I think is great. But how about that 80%, that 78, 80%? What's the status of MOOCs worldwide? Are you seeing them? Where are the major drivers? What are the major countries pushing MOOCs? Are they changing shape as they circulate worldwide?
A lot of like something like Shwetang X is a Chinese-based platform, so it's not like all these users are mixing together. Definitely on the big platform like Coursera edX, mixing of users happen, but some of them are national platforms, so they might only be focused on their own countries, and they might be in a language that is only accessible to the people of that country. So when I did unfortunately, one of the things that has changed over time is like the forums are no longer as active as they used to be. But before that, like when you had active forums, and in certain courses still have, and that's a huge benefit to a student where you can, like, I remember there was some civil, I think it was an edX course on bridges or something, and people were sharing photos about bridges in their neighborhoods all across the world. There was a course on energy, and there were people who were working for these energy companies sharing experiences. I've heard stories in the Georgia Tech program, the online masters in computer science, where since a lot of these people are senior engineers, so you get really good peer reviews. So there are a lot of, I think in some cases there are benefits that you might, I think online education can actually be better than offline or face-to-face education, just because of the wealth of experience. But it's not, but it's always, it's not something it's difficult to monetize and difficult to communicate that this is, it just happens on its own. And as like providers have focused more on availability of MOOCs. Before they were offered once or twice a year, now they're offered throughout the year. So people are moving in much smaller cohorts, and that has made that MOOCs are no longer massive.
So MOOCs
even
now.
though so I mean there's a whole discussion around the word itself, but so it's become more and more what do you call like a person, like a private person just watching videos and doing assignments. It's not true for all courses, but in many cases that's how it is. And the communities are like maybe got pushed it to paying users. You can like Udacity does that a lot. They have a lot of they have a Slack channel. They have a built-in support, mentor support in the platform itself. Another group chat in the platform itself. They have a weekly office hours. So they have all these different kinds of community aspects, but it's all only for paid users.
Along with that, one question we had was about a specific nation. A question was from a wonderful forum member, Vanessa Vale, who wants to know about FutureLearn and wonders, where do you see FutureLearn going? Or as she puts it, what's the future of FutureLearn? Thank you, Vanessa.
Like FutureLearn, it's I think one of the best looking platforms out there. Their focus is mostly on social learning experience. For those who don't know, they're wholly owned by Open University, but they have their own separate offices. I think they're in the British Council Library office or something like that in London.
Not sure.
But so I mean, if you're following FutureLearn recently, they and other MOOC providers are pushing heavily into online degrees. So FutureLearn has announced a few online degrees and graduate certificate programs from a number of partners, which include like Open University, Coventry University, Deakin in Australia, I think Murdoch University. I'm not a few Australian universities. So they seem to be pushing in that direction, pushing towards online degrees. sort of being a platform where other universities can launch their online degrees.
Are they mostly working with British universities, or are they reaching out to the global audience?
So far, they've announced Australian universities, more Australian universities, and one British universities, Coventry, and Open University, right? So
Right.
Open
That's their
University
base.
is there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I asked Simon Nelson, like I met him like a couple of weeks ago at ASU GSV, and why Australia? He said like they've been always closer due to cricket and just they have a commonwealth and a strong connection there. And Australia is more
Right.
open because of their size. Australia is always had distant education programs,
Right. Right.
so they're more open to online degrees are a normal thing in Australia. So future learn formed partners there.
Vanessa, that was a great question. I think you've just hit on the next global partnership between FutureLearn and Australia. That's very important. We had, just to remind everybody, again, you can see that there are three ways of asking questions: through the chat box, through clicking the raised hand so you can follow Tom, or clicking the question mark like Vanessa just did and Brian did earlier. So we have time for your questions. We had a question that came up from a member of the community a few weeks ago. They pointed out, let me grab the citation for this. They pointed out an interesting article in University World, which was looking at MOOCs globally. And this interesting argument, let me just pull University World News, excuse me. I'll put a link in the chat box. This is what Eileen Kennedy and the great Diana Laurillard, they were wondering if MOOCs would become a tool for teacher development in the developing world. That is, that a lot of developing world populations have a strong need for teacher training and teacher professional development, but they often don't have the local support to do that fully. Here, let me grab the quote. We start from the premise that MOOCs can only help to meet the challenge of education at scale via their value for professional development. I'll put a link to this story in the chat box so you folks can take a look at it. But what do you think? Is that possible? Do you think we could have MOOCs perform that function?
I remember being like at some panel at South by Southwest Education where there were representatives from Coursera and edX, and somebody asked about that. It was a panel around teacher PD, and one of the problems was MOOCs or MOOC providers, the big ones at least, focus on global solutions, and teacher PD can be a local solution. Each state in United States has a different laws, and so the MOOC format itself, yes, I think can be replicated and be used, but it has to be done by organizations who already are kind of in the know. And I bet it's already happening. In many cases, a lot of these courses have a strong participation of teachers. So if it's a chemistry course, there will be a lot of chemistry teachers looking at the course.
Right.
So they're informally sort of training themselves on the domain area. There are a lot of courses around teacher PD, but I don't know how they're doing. It's it's a lot of the data and a lot of that is locked in the MOOC providers, and generally I feel that their focus has shifted to more business and technology training rather than because coding is a global, teaching Python is the same everywhere. So same with data science, machine learning, the tools used are global. So I think from a business perspective, it makes sense for them to target global challenges. And many times previously they partnered with organizations, but I've never seen that successfully play out, where they partner with local organizations and solve local problems.
Well, I had an interesting conversation with people from a French institution, France Université Numérique, who were talking about, they did a whole bunch of French language MOOCs for a global audience. Then they were doing a second wave, which were aimed specifically at Francophone countries that weren't France. So they were looking at what does Morocco need? What does Quebec need? It was pretty interesting. We have two more questions.
They're also pivoting to corporate training. Fun is also going towards corporate training. So
there we go. That seems to be a major way forward. Um, Tara, we have a question from. Oops, let me make sure I had the right one. We had a question from. Who is this? Oh, from Mena Zhu. Mena asks, as learners, self-directed learning is important in MOOCs. I'm wondering, how can instructors design the courses to help students develop self-directed learning skills? Thank you. I think you can see it there on the screen too.
Yeah. I mean, I think instructors have a limited role when someone is not, there's no financial relationship, or someone is just sitting at their home. And I think there's a very limited role where, you can design a good course, but that doesn't mean there's an upper limit to how good it's course you can design that will get people to learn, or like finish the course. It can, I feel like community is that layer that actually does that. A strong community can help people finish courses, and be engaged. I don't create courses, so I don't think I can answer this question. But I would suggest anyone if you're recommending someone a course, I would start with learning how to learn, or something that, people who are outside of learning for a long time. I think it's a very entertaining course. At the same time, it will help you, understand how you learn. And it has helped me personally.
Oh, good. Barbara Oakley from Coursera, right?
Barbara Oakley, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
It's my favorite course too, and it has really changed how I work with Class Central. So I took it like 3 years ago.
You see, friends, this is one of the great benefits of Course Central, is that you get these recommendations about the great classes to take.
Class Central.
Class Central, excuse me, Class Central. We have another question that came up, and this is from Sukaina Walji. And Sukaina, if I mispronounced your name, please forgive me. Sukaina asks, do you know how many universities in the global south are offering MOOCs? And what proportion of that is compared to the global north? And then following that with, what implications does any imbalance have between who produces and who consumes knowledge? Terrific question.
Yeah, I would love that answer. It's easy to figure out how much. I mean, we have the list of universities. Somebody has to just go through it and tag it. But I would definitely say North has significantly more courses. US, because US is in the northern hemisphere.
Right.
Definitely. There's Latin American countries which are in the south, which are like have a decent presence too, and they generally create courses for their local audience. So yeah, I mean I think it's something that needs to look into. Like,
yeah,
I think outside of US, when like countries create nowadays, outside of or Western countries, they generally create for their local populations.
You
Like
mentioned that before. The Chinese institution, which is for Chinese speakers, and France, for France.
Yeah, like there's Thai MOOC for Thailand users, Mexico X for Latin America, Myriada X for Latin America. So a lot of these smaller providers, they have their own struggles, trying to get funding, or trying to convince their local universities to create courses and trying to monetize. So
no, that's very challenging. Sukaina, or Sukena, thank you. That was a terrific question. If you have a chance, we did a wonderful session about online learning and colonialism last year with a brilliant guest. I can give you a link to that if you like. Just let me know in the chat box. This is a huge topic, and I have more questions, but so does Jim Holton. Jim, Sarah, what is your question? Are MOOCs getting closer to reducing participation in traditional schools? A variant of the Goodwill Hunting quote. You wasted $150,000 on education you could have got for $1.50 in library fees. Great question, Jim.
I think I think it is still far away. I think Coursera once published a stat that 89% of their users are above the age of 22. So I always think of MOOCs not as a replacement, but as something like that really didn't exist. Before, if you wanted to learn online, you had to go through some shady online provider or some like they still exist, but there wasn't any more like formal options to learn on, to go to a place where you were already familiar with and learn about it. You're familiar with universities, you're familiar with their teaching style, even though they might not be good or the best, but there's some familiarity. We couldn't go to familiar resources once you're outside of. I mean, you could go, but it's very expensive. So I consider MOOCs as a alternative. It's not a replacement. It's just a completely new target audience, new field. Um, and also to have a bigger impact, they need to get, which they're trying. They need to get more formal and be more recognizable. But the market still doesn't have a good way to recognize something that isn't a degree. Be it students, be it professor, be it companies, we haven't figured out a way to say like how much this is worth, or is this good. So if I say I'm a master's degree from Georgia Tech, even though you don't know what I did, it puts an image in your head. And I think we need to get to a point where you say I did a Udacity nano degree course or a specialization or edX micromaster. You should quickly be able to gauge what that means. So I think we are not there yet.
Well, that leads us to the next topic, I think. And Jim, that was a really good question. Thanks for the Goodwill Hunting quote too. We have this is the Future Trends Forum, where we try and look at the future of education and technology. And a lot of what we've been talking about has been nudging that way. But let's go a little further forward. Let's think, say, 5 years out. Where do you see MOOCs headed? Do you think they'll become mostly professional development for pay, say with either micro credentials or connections with established bricks and mortar universities? Or that's one question. Where do you see these going?
There's definitely a lot of momentum recently towards online degrees. And one of the challenges of an online degree is acquiring learners, and usually you pay a lot to acquire a learner, even few thousands of dollars for a paying student. So MOOCs have a competitive advantage because they have a lot of users already. Recently, I heard the CEO of Coursera saying like MOOCs are a pathway to online degrees. 50% of Coursera degree students who are currently enrolled are had taken a Coursera MOOC before. So it seems like they would, online degrees is definitely something that's going to happen in the next couple of years, where they're going to put a lot of resources. Corporate training is another one where where you make so they're trying to go more formal and more traditional things that people are already used to paying. And there's this I wrote about the 60 years of MOOC monetization, where you have the free tier, then the certificate, micro credential, credit, online degree, and corporate training. For the last few years, we are looking at the lower tier, and now they're looking at online degrees and corporate training. And each tier builds on the tier, adds some value on the tier below, but it's essentially the same content. So that's on the provider side of things. But on the university side of things, it's tricky because there's a lot of individual experiments going on where they're using the same content as flipped classroom. Some of them are like basically offering MOOCs to their currently enrolled students, so they don't even have to show up in a classroom. MIT and Georgia Tech both have done recent experiments where they offered the courses are also on edX, but they're offered internally. One of them was from Anant Agrawal, who is the CEO of FedEx. So students basically took an online course. On-campus students took an online course through the Open edX platform. So it might be that
like that happening.
Yeah, so it might be like my ideal world will be like a big chunk of the content is similar if you're online or offline. And offline just, online is significantly cheaper, and offline just adds a lot of other value that maybe it's, adds value on top of it. So basically, but everybody's getting the same education, but they might not be getting the same level of service or mentorship or other aspects. So, and people can move in online and offline on campus seamlessly without having to make it's either this or it's either that, like for some, like personally for me, some like I'm like just show me the videos and I don't want to talk to anyone. In some cases, some courses I need help, I need to go look in community. So I think give flexibility to the student, I think, is somewhere I hope they go, rather than saying like this is solution A is significantly better than solution B or solution C. So just giving students the choice to pick and choose depending on their life circumstances. I hope that's where. Yeah, and then I think MOOCs are like that's what it is. It's, instead of thinking of it as a replacement, it's the flexibility aspect of it that's the most interesting part. Like that's the most attractive part of MOOCs is like you traditional education, you fit your life into traditional education. Now,
right.
MOOCs, it fits into your life. So
you have the same content digitally available, but you can have the added value of face-to-face with mentorship. That's a great vision. I'm conscious of time, Dhawal, and thank you for sharing that one. We have one more question that's come from Mark. Mark, where are you today? Are you in New Jersey?
I'm in New Jersey today. Hi, everybody.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, well, at least it's nice and not snowing anymore like it was 3 weeks ago. It's now 90. Yeah. Dhawal, thanks so much for your perspective on this important topic. And maybe we can sort of end off the forum or sort of close it out by sort of perhaps stepping a little bit back. I wanted to think back to the grand vision for MOOCs in 2012, 2013, and the excitement of there's sort of an idealistic vision for like, we're going to educate the entire world. This will be amazing. And then, lots of hype, and love the perspective you brought on how the hype was good. A lot of then disappointment, though, realizing that, turns out that most of the people that are graduating already have advanced degrees. And it turns out that not very many people end up finishing these. And as you've seen, it's a long time since then. We've had another 5 years of development. So I wanted to get your perspective on I guess the question is, are there large roadblocks that are standing in the way of actually eventually executing that original vision of open education for everyone that lifts the entire world up? Or was the vision wrong? And so how do you put that into perspective, was our eye on the wrong target? And this is a compatible thing with traditional education, or is it just going to take us 20, 30 years to get to where we want to go, as opposed to 2 years like everybody wanted in 2012?
Yeah, I think, MOOCs, if you really think about it, they were an accident. It just took off. And the vision was like, after it took off, they tried to build a story around it, so maybe, I would say like it didn't start with a vision first. It started with just like they just launched it and it took off. So the vision came second, and then people realized, like just putting a course online doesn't mean people will take it. And it's similar in the fitness area too. Like if you really, I think learning like fitness, where like just because you have, all those YouTube videos doesn't mean, or all these tools and apps and, the watch, it doesn't mean I'll be fit just because of all that. and it takes a while to create a culture of fitness. And you have these YouTube celebrities, or you have these TV celebrities, or people who are like looked at fitness guru and all that. So I think a whole ecosystem will be needed. And what MOOC providers are now doing, like the simplest, or maybe not the simplest, but one of the base layer of the ecosystem, which is the content. And I think education is still high touch, and to really solve, like really to reach the people who need it most, I think there will have to be some offline intervention, and like ecosystems and tools, and like more experiments will be needed to figure that out. Hopefully, like if the market recognizes MOOCs, or market or credit transfer and all these things are easier, then I think the offline ecosystem, it makes the offline ecosystem more powerful. But because of the lack of formal recognition of MOOCs, it makes it difficult to, for someone in India, like you have to only do MOOCs for learning. But it's hard to prove something. Like people are still used to seeing a degree, so it's hard to say like you did a MOOC and like get a job interview or something. But that's also changing. Some of them are trying to do like edX partnered with Tech Mahindra back in India, where if you finish your MicroMaster, you get an automatic interview. Same with GE in Boston. So it's still, I think it's still a long way to go. I don't know if I don't think we'll see anything immediate in the short term.
And it could be interesting to see how that develops in multiple ways. Like maybe there will be the social structures necessary for MOOCs to realize their sort of full social potential may take part somewhat in conjunction with the universities that are helping shape them, but may also take other forms. The memberships and the ways in which the online world is creating new social structures. Maybe the way to fully realize that, both the potential for MOOCs in the educational side, but also for how to make them impactful on the job training, will require a whole new layer. Maybe that's what happens the next 10 years.
Yeah, I mean,
thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. I think as money increases in the online education world, I think there will be some money for the other ecosystems. The central players will still make a big chunk, but my worry always is like they might just make too much money from online degrees and corporate training that they forget the other market. I feel like corporate training definitely biases the whole online education market, is because once you get big enough, or even if you don't get big enough, that's where the money is.
Right.
So,
right. Mark, that's a terrific set of questions. Thank you so much, and
thanks so much.
Keep growing the beard.
Working on it, Brian.
Good. Friends, I hate to say it, but we are at the end of the hour, or the top of the next one. We've just gone through MOOCs in great detail. Dhawal, thank you so much for your great, thoughtful answers and your glimpse into the future where MOOCs could go. Is classcentral.com the best place to find you and your work?
Yes, class-central.com.
Excellent. There's a link in the chat box.
Yeah, and MOOC Report is our blog. So it's like class-central.com/report, where I write all my articles.
Excellent. And some of us are big fans of your articles, so please keep them going.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll try.
Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to following up.
All right.
But friends, don't leave yet, everybody. We have to tell you what else is on the docket, what else is coming up. As you think about MOOCs, and it's extraordinary, as Dhawal said, as accidental development. Keep an eye on that and see where that goes. Now, speaking of the future, next week on the 9th, we have an extraordinary project, and we might be the first ones to get a look at this. Matt Warwood is the creator and director of Class of 2032. This is a video project and a web project that tries to imagine what students would be like and what education supports them would be like in time for graduating in that astonishing to imagine year. I'm really looking forward to asking Matt how he built this project and what he's found out, especially with many, many interviews with educators, children, staff, and all kinds of people involved. So please stay tuned for next week, and we look forward to seeing what we can find from that. Now, also on the way to next week, we continue to read Walkway by Cory Doctorow in our book club. We are right now in the middle of the novel. We've got 2 blog posts describing in detail the first 4 chapters, and they've turned to the creation and imagination of a new university. So it's an exciting book. It's an accessible book. It's a thought-provoking book, and speaking now directly to the future of education. So please keep an eye on that. Dig into the book. I think you'll look forward to that, especially the week after Matt. We're going to have Cory Doctorow as our guest, so you can bring questions for him. Now, if you'd like to get this book, or if you'd like to get other books, we have our online bookstore, so you can go there. It's the only bookstore devoted to the future of education and technology. The titles are curated solely for that purpose, so go take a look. You'll find some of the people there, some of the authors have been guests in the past. Now, in the meantime, if you'd like to keep this conversation going, there's all kinds of ways to do this in social media. You can find me on Twitter at Brian Alexander, or go to brianalexander.org to take a look at my blog. You can go to Twitter for Shindig events or official Shindig, and let's keep all of this happening. The hashtag FTTE is a great place to continue this. We've already seen a couple of comments in just the past few minutes. Once again, thank you everybody for a great conversation, terrific questions, and just a great topic. We'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.